Assalamu'alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, we are from Group 8 of Excellent Class, course Public Economics. Let's us introduce ourselves. We are from Group 8 of Excellent Class. We have 3 members in our group. There are first Siti Nur Kasanah, student number 038. Second, Dewi Arsyidah, student number 066. And Luffytha Pamela AP, student number 002. On this occasion, we will presentation a review journal with the title Effect of Carbon Tax on the Industrial Competitiveness of Chongqing, China. In this presentation, we will discuss about first, research background, second, problem, third, research purpose, fourth, method, fifth, result, sixth, conclusion, seven, policy recommendation, and the last, critics. First, research background. Research background. In recent decades, China's total energy demand has increased rapidly as a result of economic development and improvement in people's living standard. The nation's energy structure is dominated by fossil fuels, which leads to severe greenhouse gas (GHG) emissions. Since 2006, sharp energy demand growth and the overuse of fossil fuels have caused China to surpass the US as the world's largest carbon dioxide emitter. In the near term, the nation's 13th five-year plan explicitly proposed an obligatory indicator that carbon intensity should decline by 18% and energy consumption per unit of GDP should decrease by 15% in 2020 compared to 2010. Likewise, the proportion of non-fossil fuels in total primary energy consumption will increase to 15% by 2020. Carbon tax is one of the most efficient market-based mitigation policy instruments for achieving a given abatement target, and indeed, it is one of the most reasonable carbon mitigation tactics in China. The carbon tax is a cost-effective measure taken by Chongqing, China, in reducing fossil fuel consumption and greenhouse gas emission. A carbon tax is a tax levied on the carbon content of fuels, which is a price measure. The implementation of carbon taxes in the economy will impact both economic growth and carbon emission reduction. Economic growth and the reduction in carbon emission will boost the competitiveness of the regional sector industry. Second, problem. Problem in general. The general problem with this journal article is the increasing demand for energy and the use of fossil fuels. It is proposed as a compulsory indicator that carbon intensity should decline by 18% and energy consumption per unit of GDP should be reduced by 15% by 2020 compared with 2010. Similarly, non-fossil fuel proportion in primary energy consumption will increase by 15% by 2020. A carbon tax is used as a cost-effective measure in reducing carbon emission. Research question. This study aimed to address the following research question. First, what are the economic effects of different carbon tax levels? Second, to what degree could different levels of carbon taxes contribute to achieving carbon emission reduction targets? And lastly, how will different levels of carbon taxes influence the competitiveness of industrial sector in a heavy industry-based city? Research purpose. The research was intended to discover how different carbon taxes across the region would affect local industrial competition in Chongqing, China.
Next is the method in the study. First of method is research method. In this study, using the IMEDCGE or Integrated Model of Economy, Energy, and Environment for Sustainable Development, computable general equilibrium, by applying the multi-sector, multi-region, recursive, and dynamic CGE models that LEEEP or Laboratory of Energy and Environmental Economics and Policy continues to develop. In this study, it includes two regions of Chongqing and part of China, covering 33 economic commodities and related sectors. Second of method is data sources. This study considered 2012 as the reference year due to the issue of data availability. Number 1. The input-output table for Chongqing and China. Number 2. Energy balance tables. Number 3. The carbon emission factors of different fossil fuels. And number 4. The energy prices of coal, oil, and gas for the year 2012. Third of method is scenario definition. In this study, researchers use business as usual BAU scenarios. The BAU scenario reflects a naturally graded state of economic growth and the carbon emission reduction targets. The carbon tax scenario considers the implementation of a carbon tax policy for Chongqing and the rest of China to ensure China achieves its ND target. According to difference in carbon tax rates, carbon tax scenarios can be divided into main categories: uniform and uniform carbon tax scenarios. A uniform carbon tax scenario is tax C4P4, which means Chongqing's carbon tax is the same as other China's, and the tax rates increase linearly. Tax C2P4 and tax C3P4 show that carbon taxes across China will be 2/4 and 3/4 of Chongqing's taxes by 2030. Meanwhile, tax C6P4 and tax C8P4 show that China's carbon tax is 6/4 and 8/4 of Chongqing by 2030. Next up is the economic and energy situation in Chongqing. Located in southwestern China, Chongqing is the largest industrial and commercial city in the upper reaches of the Yangtze River. As a traditional industrial base, Chongqing's dominant industrial sectors include transport equipment, machinery manufacturing, food manufacturing, non-metallic mineral products, and the chemical industry, all of which are energy-intensive industries. In recent years, tourism in Chongqing has also expanded rapidly. The rapid development of 7 pillar industries has led to a drastic increase in Chongqing's overall energy consumption. Chongqing's energy situation is mainly based on fossil fuels, and the percentage of fossil fuels in total primary energy consumption has reached 86.7%, leading to substantial amount of GHG or greenhouse emissions. Next is result. The economic effects of different carbon tax levels. Carbon taxes can effectively reduce carbon emissions. However, it will increase the company's production costs, which can affect the trends in macro indicators including GDP per capita, primary energy consumption, carbon emissions, and carbon intensity. In the BAU scenario, GDP will increase from 2012 to 2030 around 2.04 times. It's from 6.17 to 15.2 KUSD ton per capita. Meanwhile, in the uniform carbon tax C4P4 scenario, GDP in 2030 will decrease by 0.76%. In the Taxi 2 before and Taxi 3 before scenarios, it will decrease by 1.54% and 1.63%, where Chongqing has a lower carbon tax. In the Taxi 6 before and Taxi 8 before scenario, GDP will decrease by 2.01% and 2.49%, with Chongqing having higher carbon taxes respectively. Next, different levels of carbon taxes contribute to achieving carbon emission reduction target. Primary energy consumption in 2030 will be reduced by 32.07% in the C4P4 tax scenario respectively, 39.04% and 34.88% in tax C2P4 and tax C3P4 scenarios, by 31.70% in the Taxi 6P4 scenario and by 27.94% in the C8P4 tax scenario in 2030. This will also reduce carbon emissions by 2030 to the same level as the primary energy reduction rate. However, in the BAU scenario, the reduction of carbon emission is not enough to achieve the target of reduction carbon intensity, which will only decrease by 39.05% from 2012 to 2030. However, in the Taxi 2 before and Taxi 3 before scenarios, the carbon intensity in Chongqing in 2030 will experience an additional decrease of 31.06% and 28.34%, while in the Taxi 6 before and Taxi 8 before scenarios in 2030, it will decrease by 26.38% and 23.95% respectively. This shows that after imposing a carbon tax, the carbon intensity will decrease even more.
Okay, next, different levels of carbon tax influence the competitiveness of the industrial sector in a heavy industry-based city. The industrial structure of Chongqing is increasing in line with the trend observed in developed countries in terms of economic development and the increase in the level of per capita income. The proportion of labor-intensive industries, such as primary industry, will decrease while the proportion of secondary and tertiary industries will gradually increase. To compare the output of sector in Chongqing between the non-uniform carbon tax scenario and the uniform scenario or tax C4P4, the sector will divided into winners and losers according to change in output levels by comparing tax C2P4, where Chongqing has the least favorable tax with tax C4P4 by 2030. In the winner sector, the industrial output of the Chongqing sector under the tax C2P4 scenario, where other Chinese tax rates are lower than Chongqing, is higher than the tax C4P4 scenario in 2030. Meanwhile, in the loser sector, the output is less than the tax C4P4 scenario. It can be seen that when the carbon tax throughout China increased from a low level to a high level, the change in Chongqing's industrial output was not appropriate. Okay, next, this is a graphic that a winner sector in Chongqing, which include agriculture, textile, food production, metal products, transport equipment, machinery, electronic and other manufacture. Compared to the tax C4P4 scenario, the output of the sector will increase in the tax C2P4 and tax C3P4 scenario. And then the loser sector in Chongqing are coal mining, paper, chemicals, non-metal, metal smelting, and power generation. Compared to the tax C4P4 scenario, the industrial output of this sector will decrease based on tax C2P4 and tax C3P4. The results show that the carbon tax level plays a key role in sector output. The lower the carbon tax, the higher the output. Okay, next about conclusion. Based on the two-region dynamic computable general equilibrium or CGE model, the study identified the effect of different carbon tax on sectoral output and industrial competitiveness from 2015 to 2030 between Chongqing and the rest of China. The results show that the implementation of a carbon tax could help achieve China's nationally determined contribution or NDC carbon intensity reduction target by 2030. However, it will have little negative effect on economic growth, with GDP decreasing by 1.54% until 2.5% in Chongqing. Meanwhile, due to diverse characteristics in terms of geographical location, industrial structure, energy structure, and economic development, the effect of carbon tax and economic activity level in different regions show discrepancies. When Chongqing's tax are higher than in the rest of China, agriculture, textile, food, transportation equipment, machinery, and electronic will benefit from increased output activities stimulated by the demand from the rest of China. In contrast, paper, chemicals, non-metal production, and metal smelting will suffer output loss because demand is more dependent on the local market.
Next up is policy recommendation. Number 1. The principle of neutral tax revenue must be embraced by maintaining a constant level of tax receipts by reducing other taxes, such as individual income taxes and social security taxes. Number 2. Carbon tax revenues should be used to subsidize companies to reduce economic losses and encourage the development of new technologies in energy savings and environmental protection. Number 3. Some companies and sectors that take energy efficient measures or technologies must be compensated with tax revenue relief and preference policies. Number 4. It is necessary to impose different tax rates for different regions or sectors.
And the last is about critique to this journal from our group. The positive critiques are first, the study creates a business as usual or BAU scenario and 5 carbon tax scenario to compare the effect of areas subject to carbon tax and those not. And the second, in this journal, a graphic image is presented that explains the comparison of the effect of carbon tax carried out. And the negative critique are first, this research only analyzes interaction and competition in the domestic market. It should also be necessary to analyze the interaction between the market and international trade so that more detailed results are expected. And the second, the study mentioned that scale effect and price effect play an important role in determining industrial output activity, but not quantitative testing of the extent to which put effects play an important role in industrial output activity. Okay, we think enough from us. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.